some people might look at some of those experiences as, wow, you really went through a lot. And I know that many people go through a lot of things, from traumas in their childhood, and we could go on. But what I did choose to do is stay closely connected to God.
Hello, welcome to the Levelin Up podcast with Brigham Blackham. Guys, we have my friend Joan Robison here. She is an amazing author, entrepreneur, someone you do not want to miss the next half an hour with, because we're going to be talking about what happens beyond Flip the Switch. Now, she is author of this awesome book. I'm only halfway through it. I wanted to finish it before we got it, but I only had like 2 days. So I'm like, trying to burn through it. Man, there's some really amazing insights in here. So stoked to have a conversation with you. And flipping the switch, that just fell down. That's all right. That's why these are live. They're fun. But guys, I'm so stoked to have Joan on today. Now, one of the things I'm still trying to figure out when I'm doing these lives is, how do I get that little like bookend thing to happen? So we're going to try it. You ready? I'm going to push the button and see if it works. Sweet, it did work. All right. Ooh, that's fancy. I love it. New technology. It's a real thing. So, Joan, thank you so much for being on today. Let's start off with how do you talk about what flip the switch is, like in a general context? If someone's never read your book, what is flipping the switch? What does that mean?
Well, first, let me say what an honor and a pleasure to be on your show, Brigham. I really appreciate it. I have to tell your audience, and for those that are watching, Brigham and I have been at some different, masterminds and things like this, but you really came to my rescue that one day. And
That's right.
Hey, gosh, if it probably wouldn't have been for you stepping out of just the comfort zone of doing your own thing and really I'm going to be of service, is what I really felt that you did, because we didn't know each other that well. Yeah. And you really helped me when I needed some help. So I just want to say thank you. And also, it's really a privilege to be here. Okay. So now, as far as flip the switch, say that question one more time.
So what does flip the switch mean? I know you've got a whole book on it, but for our audience that has never heard of this concept or idea, what does it mean to you?
So really, let me just explain this, because it's kind of flipping the switch really just means from going from the dark and flipping the switch and turning on the light. That's really kind of the way that I like to just share it, just keep it simple. Yeah. But if we really break it down, the darkness is really emotions of fear, doubt, limiting beliefs. And the light is of God, of joy, of peace, of gratitude, of all those things that make you feel euphoric and elated and your true sense of essence. So, but I do have to say this, back in 2000, when, all of these things started transpiring in the world that were, a little bit different from what we'd been experiencing. I was called really to write a book. And I remember thinking, I won't go into that whole story because it is kind of a long story, but I remember thinking, well, what am I really going to write about? And the truth was, I had recognized that so many people on my team, clients that I worked with, there was just this huge blanket of fear. And I just remember I was in prayer one day, and it was just like God spoke to me and said, you know what? I need you to help more people out of fear. And then within me kind of going, yes, okay, I'll do that, then things start showing up for you. Yeah. Right. So I want all the listeners to know that when you begin opening space for those gut intuition, kind of those things, it's like, that's kind of an odd idea, right? As I opened up space, things started appearing. well, that, and then
We have a visitor. I love it.
yeah, this is my cat, Maxine. She does this every Zoom or anything I'm on. She likes to be a part of, just so everyone knows.
Excellent.
Hello, Maxine. So at any rate, what I will say is, as I was called to write this, like I said, things started showing up in my kind of world. Someone invited me to a podcast. It happened to be a podcast on writing a book. And I'm like, why am I here? You know, all these different, what we would call synchronicities. And it led me down that path to write the book. And here's what I'll say, Brigham, is I was always helping people go from problem to solution. But I think really the book is, it's a portion of my own story of going from some of my own fears and darknesses into the light, and how that transformable change not only impacted me, because of course it impacted me, but what I think most people don't realize is how it impacts all of those around you.
Yeah.
So when we're not in great places, that also affects all of those around you. But what I found was that the majority of people stayed stuck in limiting beliefs and fears because they didn't have the tools to get out of it. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's kind of long-winded on my part, but that's really how the book came about. And then from there, boy, you know, a lot of additional things came. And I think you got my cards. People love those cards.
You got them. Yeah.
And those are just like, you know, 30 seconds and you can flip the switch. So when people become more aware that they're in that fear-based place or in the dark, then and only then can we really do something about it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I love so far, I'm like 90 pages in or so. One of the things that I really love is you have examples of like, here's a low frequency word.
Yeah.
Here's a high frequency word. And I love that because when you start to choose empowering words, things that help you resonate at a higher frequency, you are creating opportunity for yourself in your mind and potential. Whereas if you're using low frequency language, it doesn't inspire. It actually lets you feel like you're stuck in the dark. So when you talk about high frequency words, what is some high frequency words or examples that you've had since you've written the book? Like something that's like not even in the book. It's like, oh, what's beyond it?
Yeah. Well, first, I think what's really important is to understand, again, awareness is the key here. Okay. So for those of you guys that are out there listening, maybe you're taking a note or two, write that word down, awareness, because you cannot change what you're not aware of. So I like to keep things super simple, right? I mean, so simple that I can even teach this to a fourth grader. And literally I have grandchildren, and my little granddaughter, actually, she stayed the night with me last night. And I said, now listen, Gigi has a meeting in the morning and, you know, you're going to sleep. She always loves to sleep in. But she kind of woke up when I woke up, and I said, you know what? I want you to lay back down. It's really early. And she said, can I do a meditation? You know, because that really uplifts, right? But here's what I want to say. When we're aware, only then can we change. So this is how simple I like to keep this. All right. Oh, I just got off track here. See, when we're live.
When you're aware, you said that's where you keep it.
But I was just about ready to give you an example of something around awareness. What was it? Tell me, can you remember what you first said to me? And then I went off to the grandchildren.
Oh, you're good. So it's just this whole idea of, as of right now, how do you use that high frequency type of verbiage, that language that opens up your mind, flips that switch? And what have you learned since you've written that book? Yep.
Okay. So this is where I was. So you have to be aware. And when I said I like to keep it really simple, this is what I want to ask those of you out there listening. In order to understand what frequency, what energy that you're on, you just simply have to ask yourself, how do I feel? Okay, that's it. So if I'm not feeling good, then I get to start asking the question, well, what has me feeling this way? And it might be like, oh gosh, I stubbed my toe. And then maybe that little bit of got me in a little bit of a mood. I mean, it can be anything. It could be, you know what? I just cut someone off in traffic or they cut me off, right? So the question really becomes, how are you feeling? Because if it's anything less than good, you're operating below what I call below the belt, right? You're operating in these lower vibrational frequencies. And I guess really, words have impact, but they have impact and meaning based on what we give them. Okay. So, a lot of people will say, well, if you say these words, these are taboo words. It's not the words at all. I mean, you could take a word that maybe society or humanity says that word is not a great word, maybe it's even a swear word, but if it's used in the right context, by the way, I'm not saying go out and start swearing, but I'm just giving you the example that, you might be a really passionate person and you might be like, damn, that's good. And that does not mean that is low frequency. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
So I think, Brigham, to directly answer your question, what I have learned since writing the book is strictly through the discipline of practicing the principles that I teach. And what really has come of it is more results, more experience, helping more people. And the true test of all this stuff, in my opinion, is, I've been using it to build my sales teams, to operate in life, because there was a time, and you probably read it in the book. If you're 90 pages in, you've already read it, where I had some really not so great things happening. And some people might look at some of those experiences as, wow, you really went through a lot. And I know that many people go through a lot of things, from traumas in their childhood, and we could go on. But what I did choose to do is stay closely connected to God. That's where I draw my strength, my inspiration. Okay. And I allowed those circumstances to shape me, to humble me, and to use them for good, to help all of those people around me. And here's the beauty of things like this. I was just sharing with someone the other day. They asked me, gosh, you kind of put it out there, like you're sort of kind of an open book. Like, I don't know if I had written about getting a DWI and all that stuff. And I said, well, here's the thing. Probably the reason why I had the courage to write that is because that challenge shaped me, and I overcame that drinking issue. One day at a time, I don't drink. And that's been hugely life-changing, because remember what I said in the beginning, if you're not aware, you can't change it.
Right.
And Brigham, I'm just going to tell you, I wasn't really aware that I had a drinking problem until I got in a little bit of trouble. I just thought I was, over drinking a bit. And when you're in bad places, this is the thing that happens. But I didn't really understand that I had a problem. And I would just say, thank God, because that night, and I wrote about that in the book, was, I could look at it today like, wow. Or let me go back. That night when I was getting wheeled away in the police car, I was thinking, what have you done? You are a mother of a 6-year-old who, by the way, is now 30. You have all these responsibilities, and all of this has gotten you here. And it felt like the worst day of my life. But actually, it was just the beginning. It was just the beginning of me writing a new chapter, writing a new story, and understanding that I had the power to do that.
I love that. Overcoming any challenge, everybody has challenges in their life, but overcoming any challenge, it's in that moment where you get to make a decision. Am I going to stay on this path and get these similar results and keep myself in handcuffs, or am I going to liberate myself, change my reality by saying, enough's enough. I want to be different. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. It's getting really vulnerable to share things like that. But I love that you're sharing a scar, not a wound. And I like
That's
the differentiation, because a scar is something that's instructive. It can help somebody, but it's not still bleeding, right?
that's right.
You've
That's
got
right.
moving.
And, I love that you even brought that up. I talk about that a lot with team members because, let's just pivot one little bit. I want to say this because this is really important. And I think, many people know that as we continue to build businesses on social media, we want to attract attention,
Mhm.
right? We want to. I mean, that's the currency, right? Attention.
Yeah.
But many people do it through the wound.
Yeah.
And I would just say, as a suggestion to anybody here, people love to know the story, but they really, truly love to know how someone overcame
Yeah.
the challenge. Because what happens is I'm listening to it, you're listening to it, the viewers are listening, and they're going, okay, if that happened to her, I have the hope that I can also get out of it. And I want to say one last thing. People ask me this a lot. This has been a journey. It's not an arrival, right? Like I haven't arrived, you know.
I think we ever arrive, right? It's always a process.
Right. It's a journey. And through the journey, I have learned so many things about learning how to enjoy it and lean into it because I was not that kind of person, not in the beginning. I was always going, I'll be happy when I can get this, then I'll be happy. When I can get that in my bank account, okay, you know what? Then that means success. And you know what I realized? This is something else. It's big.
I feel like I need to lean in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I realized that it's not about the goal and it's not really even about the destination. It's about who you become along the way. And I think most people, you know, are like me. If you're not aware of some of these things, you just kind of think that life is happening to you
Mhm.
instead of for you. And, if you don't have tools, it's just conceptual. So you'll notice like my book is chock full of tools. So literally, if somebody picks up my book, they've got stories, they're going to know about, how I came from here to here. But they're also going to go, okay, wait, I can do this too.
Yeah.
I can catch myself in these fear-based places knowing, ooh, I don't feel very good. And I can do anything. This is a clue here, by the way. Anything to make me feel better. So let me give you an example. Let's say today I woke up and, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about a thought from yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, that's like looking in the rear view mirror, and it's kind of hard to drive from the rear view mirror. But
It
let's
is.
say I had a challenge yesterday and I'm kind of focused on that. Like, oh, that. Okay, now I know
Like,
I'm below the belt, right? Because it doesn't feel good to go back
yeah.
there. Now, most people would think, well, just change the thought, but it's not always that easy.
Mm.
And especially when you're the one in the emotion of those things. Oh, it's easy for me to teach it. But when you're the one in it, we tend to obsess about a worry, especially things like finances or, husband and wife partnership, children. These are things that mean the most to us. And so we obsess about the fact that it's not happening fast enough, or why is this person this way? Or, you know what? I've been working my tail off and my bank account's not really showing it. So we're in these places of illuminating what's not happening or what we don't want. And that right there is a clue that you're below that belt. You're below the line of a higher vibrational mentality, thought, and frequency. So if I can catch that, and this is what I've been practicing for years, because when I first started this, Brigham, in the days of that story, right,
Mhm.
I might have had a month, 2 months, a year. Like I literally was in a relationship whom now today I recognize as one of my greatest teachers. See, if I wasn't in that relationship, I wouldn't have went to go get the help because I thought he needed the help. Like, otherwise I could go change him. But really what it was is, oh boy, Joan, you got to look within. You've got to go to God about you and your relationship. And when you can get right within yourself and feel empowered, you're probably going to attract a better relationship, which has been true also. But I share that because these are common things that the majority of human beings think, right? It's just not uncommon. We want to point the finger. We want to blame that person, even parents, why we're the way we are. And really, I mean, I'm 56 years old, almost 57, right? And I have the responsibility of my own life. Nobody did anything to me. I still have 2 arms, 2 legs, a great mind. I am the one that has the choice.
I love that. One of the things that I would love to share really quick was, while I've been reading your book, it's reminded me of 2 different things. My first time I ever heard this concept was 15 years ago when I was a theater practitioner. My mentor, Marilee Webb, she said, I don't care what happened before you go on stage. Everybody has stuff.
Right.
But as soon as you are ready to step on stage, you take a moment and you let all of that darkness, whatever it is that's in your life, go. And then you say, I am here, I'm in this present moment, and you flip the switch in that way that allows you to take that step on stage and present the very best that you can, to be the very best you can.
Wow.
And I think that has instructed so much of what I do in theater, in my business, in communicating with other people, because that idea of flipping the switch, it's really universal. Every single one of us, every day, at some point, will go and turn on the light switch or turn it off.
Right.
And the other thing was, your book has reminded me of the way my mother wrote a song for me when I was a missionary. Right before I went on my mission, she wrote a song that was called Let Your Light So Shine. It was based in the idea of, don't put your light under a bushel. You need to let it shine, because otherwise, how do you help people? It's like having a candle and everybody else has no flame, but you've got a flame. If you light their flame, it doesn't diminish your flame.
Yeah.
Right? That song, let your light so shine, share the love you feel, let it blossom in your smile, like a city on a hill. You think about this. Every single time that we are willing to share that light, share insight, the word insight, it allows you to see. It's in sight.
Yeah. Insight.
And if you don't have light in your life, you don't have that higher frequency, you can't see.
That's right.
So in your experience, what are some of the insights that have come by applying this consistently, day in, day out?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say from my own experience. So literally when I teach these practices, which by the way, I teach every Monday on a free morning motivation, and I'll drop the link to you and people can go to that. It's a generic, like, global morning motivation. We flip the switch, we talk about a subject, and the amount of people that I've seen transform literally before my eyes, I just get like, I can't even believe it. I've had some people that have showed up that could barely get out of bed, and today they're thriving, right? And it's nothing of me. I just want to make sure I say that. I'm just the facilitator and the tool, giver, right? I mean, it's kind of like, try these things. And because they're so easy, I think people can hang with that and discipline themselves a little bit around that. They're nothing that you have to go to school for or anything like that, right? But what I've recognized is, go ahead, Missy. Jeez.
She's just not feeling comfortable. She had to switch
Yeah,
around.
she had to move around, and I'm going to move a little bit because the light at the background there. Okay. But what I've recognized, Brigham, is for myself, it's the quality of well-being that I have, and again, this is something that I didn't recognize it at first. So I want to say that to people, like, people recognized a change in me before I recognized it.
Yeah.
Right. And the change happens from the inside out. Right. So some of the things that I recognized were, remember I mentioned, it was this span of time that I could collapse time. In other words, when I say collapse time, I had a limiting belief that initially, well, this is going to be a good couple years. In other words, I got my DWI, started down this path of, really creating a new life. I joined a network marketing company that to this day, I will say every little move in my life as I look back is so divine, right down to the exact money that I had in order to buy my first place, right down to me writing out what I wanted. And I teach about this because I didn't know anything about manifesting, but I did know about praying. And I did ask God, please help me. And that was probably the most powerful prayer that I could have prayed, right? Is just please help me. 3 words. So use them. That's the way I see it. But here's what happened. Remember I said, because I took the first step, things start happening. And that's what I want people to know. You might be in the darkest place. I was. And I think it was even darker than I even realized.
Yeah.
And if I even look back from the human eyes, from my own standpoint, and I'm a journaler, and I'll tell you, if I have millions, no, not millions, that's not true, but I mean, I've got book bins full of journals, right? If I look back at what I wrote about then and, how I've transpired over time, it's amazing because there wouldn't, it wasn't, how do I say this? It wasn't just like, oh, I had this epiphany and everything changed. Okay. It was a real work of like, some days I thought, nothing is changing. I give up. Well, guess what? In the giving up, guess who showed up? God. In the giving up might have been the day that I'm walking, down the street and I end up helping somebody with, maybe they drop something, I pick it up, and that smile that somebody gave me. Like, I was like, wow, what's going on? I didn't always think that this was the answer. And I many times thought, I'm never going to get out of this. But you see, these were the things that I realized today catapulted what I really wanted. And I want to say this, it is in knowing what you don't want that you begin to understand more of what you want. So if we're going to talk like limiting beliefs, let's say my limiting belief is I've got to work really hard to make a lot of money. Okay. That's always been something because I grew up in a family where my dad, everybody worked really hard and they made a lot of money. But here's the deal. I believe that to where I was working myself almost, into a tailspin also. And then I realized I have a limiting belief. So what's the opposite of you have to work really hard to make money? What's the opposite? Because that's really what I wanted. I wanted to work in flow, right? I wanted to work in a peaceful manner. I wanted to help people. And I wanted to make lots of money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But my point is, I had to realize that working hard was the limiting belief, and the opposite was working in a peaceful flow. And so whatever your limiting belief is, some of you look outside and maybe your limiting belief is the world is crumbling or something. But what does that mean? It means you really want a peaceful, joyous, harmonious world. Yeah. So once we know that we really want the opposite, if we can then begin focusing on the opposite, you'll start to notice that your energy is better. Your frequency rises. And if you can begin doing this and practicing this, what you'll notice is today, a number of years later, and it doesn't take a number of years, but I'm just sharing with you just from my own perspective.
Mhm.
When something happens in my life, and I've still had a lot of challenges and different things that come in, but my way of looking at them is different. And I don't ever go to these depths.
Yeah.
I kind of go like, well, okay, that happened. What are we going to do? Flip the switch just like that. So I spend far less time in those lower places because of the awareness.
That's so awesome. One of my favorite things that you shared with me this last week were these little cards. This was
Mhm.
my favorite one, by the way. It was about challenges. You basically brought it up, but this line, what we resist persists.
Yeah,
Sometimes it is in the resisting that we keep those challenges. But
we do.
as soon as we accept those things as neutral, they are what they
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
And then we get to respond, not just react to our reality.
that's right.
That
That's
ability to respond is so key. So one of the things that I would love to hear from you is what's your special K? I call this your specialized knowledge
right.
that is going to allow somebody to go from, man, I am just sunk in this belief, to what if I create a possibility where this doesn't have to persist forever? How can I take this challenge and reframe it or look at it in a different way?
Mhm.
What would you say? Some of that specialized knowledge.
Well, again, I think most people think that like when I'm teaching something, a skill, a reframing skill, a different way to look at something, you know, uh, I mean, I could go on. There's all these little different things that we learn, but I think most people think it's going to be hard, right? Like, or they'll say to me, wait, this seems so simple. And that's the thing is we as human beings, I find, make things hard. We want to believe that it has to be hard to make this impact and difference, right? And it doesn't. So what I believe the special kind of sauce or the special
Mm.
K, as you say, right, is to really truly think of things in a compartmentalized way. Now, let me give you an example
Yeah.
of that. So if I'm, let's say, uh, waking up in the morning, right? And I recognize that, yesterday and beyond, maybe I wake up and I continually say, like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, or oh, I got to get up and do this again, or, so, maybe I'm waking up and I'm in those places. And by the way, many people are. So don't beat yourself up. It just is. And you use that word. I just kind of am going to accept
Mm.
this is just sort of my state of being. And we don't label it. It's not right or wrong. It's just where you are.
Yeah.
The question becomes, how long do you want to stay there? So I'm giving the example of waking up in the morning because I believe that when people can start their day feeling good, that momentum is likely to carry, right? So, one of the things I would look at is what is one thing that you want to change? Don't, go into this thinking like, I'm going to change the entire landscape of my day or life. I think that's why many people perceive that they failed. And by the way, there is no failure. To me, there's only practice. I don't even use the word failure. That's just for me. I don't want to give it meaning. I don't like the way that word makes me feel. And being an entrepreneur, I guess every single day I'm realizing that I can tweak and try this new thing and I can make this better. I know you get that too. So, why am I going to want to put failure on something until I perfect it? I'm not. But my point is just start with one thing. It's why people don't see themselves succeeding in business or on a diet or in a relationship because they try to do too many things at one time. And then all of a sudden, it's overwhelming because their true nature, it's trying to get through, but it seems like, wow, this is a lot of work. So if we just start with one thing, and I'm just making a suggestion that one thing in the morning would be a great way to start. And I want to say one last thing. I found that there were times where I needed other tools, and I talk about these in Morning Motivation as well as in the book. But what I mean other tools is I needed a little bit of help to get me beyond just what I could think about. Because when we're in a fear-based place, often we can't just stop and go, oh, okay, I feel joy. That isn't the way it works. We have to kind of move up the emotional scale. Okay. So what that means is I'm not feeling so great. I ask myself, what is it? And maybe I say, oh, I got in a little tiff with my kid before he left for the bus. Okay. I'm going to send Johnny some love. Okay. Now I'm up here. And then, you know what, when he gets home, we're going to have a little, mom and son sit down over a, banana bread or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now I'm feeling better. And now I'm going to visualize having a nice conversation with Johnny and blah, blah. Okay. Now I'm up here. You see, that's how we move up the scale, by being optimistic about the next move and the next move and the next move. But you can't feel higher than you think. So if I'm feeling this fear stuff, right? I can't all of a sudden begin thinking about joy. That isn't how it works, right? So those are just some of the things. And I'll say this, like, there's been many times in my life where I'm, was writing my book. And I realized in writing my book, I realized that procrastination was disguised fear. Now, I would never have known that. And I also kind of when I was in, high school and college and, I was a little bit of somebody that would procrastinate. And I always thought, oh, that's kind of a bad thing. I'm sort of a last minute Rosie. But you know what I realized when I was writing my book is I procrastinated because I didn't know where to go from there. In other words, I'd sit down to write and I was like drawing a blank. So I would get up and go clean my kitchen. And pretty soon my kitchen was so darn clean. And then I had to force myself, right? So I took a timer and said, do whatever you want for the first 10 minutes. And now you're going to sit down and write your book. And I realized, you know what? Joan's nature isn't procrastination, right? I'm not going to label that. I just was procrastinating because I didn't know what to do next. And I think people have this same challenge in their business. Like, if I don't know what to do next, maybe it's around sharing my product, maybe I lack the confidence. Chances are they're procrastinating, taking an action step. And it's not because they're bad people or they're procrastinators. They just may not know what to do. So I want to give a couple little examples. So let's say I'm in that place. Well, you just want to do anything that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
For me at that moment, it was cleaning my kitchen, or maybe it's getting up and, grabbing a nice glass of iced tea or a coffee or whatever it is. Maybe it's just taking a quick loop around your block. It's anything to disrupt the pattern of thinking. And by the way, the fastest way out of fear is action. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that you're like, I'm in fear of, let's just say, making outbound reach outs. Let's just say I'm in fear about that. It doesn't mean go make the outbound reach out right at the second. It means get up and do something other than what you're doing. Sitting in your cups, laying in your bed, whatever it is that will make you feel better. And then start, from that.
That's that pattern interrupt, that change of state. And in that change of state, you're able to change your reality.
That's right.
A lot of different ways.
That's right.
So I know our time is up today, but man, we have so much more that I want to talk about. Joan, this is just the beginning of our relationship. I'm so grateful for you coming out and sharing with us. Man, you just poured into the audience so many amazing things. Before we sign off, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had? I'd
Oh,
love to hear that little insight. Go ahead.
I mean, I just want people to know that you can be in some of these really places that you think there's no possible way out of. I want you to know I've been there. And, I've even had like 3 parents pass away. And I know, Brigham, your mom passed away. And I just, my heart breaks for that. It's hard to lose parents. And I was so close with my parent, with 4 of my parents, right? And, I learned through that time to look at, instead of the missing of the parent, which I do, but what I mean is, I learned to look at all the good that came and the gifts that came from the relationships. I learned how to feel my pain. Meaning, we're not going to tell fear or your pain to not exist, because that isn't reality of the way that the human works, right? I learned to be in acceptance that I feel this way and it's not right or wrong. But I also can compartmentalize that and then go into another chapter. And it might be, maybe it's my work, maybe it's playing with my grandkids, maybe it's, being a friend to somebody. And I can leave myself and focus on helping somebody else. And I think that has been the biggest gift over the years that allowed me to go from kind of self-centered and self-absorbed in my own cups, my own problems, because we all have them.
Oh yeah.
To, you know what, I'm going to go help someone else. And that literally was a mantra that I had. My feet hit the floor every morning. And I always think, who am I going to help today? Bring them on. So
Love that. And
yeah.
dropping the ball of wisdom. So grateful. Thank you so
Oh,
much, man. I appreciate it. Joan, how do
it's
people
the
find you
same.
online so that's easy for them to go and connect?
Yeah. So I think, instant message me and Facebook,
Great.
Joan Nielsen Robison. You could drop that in the chat. And then again, get on to morning motivation. I've been doing this since before Zoom was Zoom. We used to do freeconferencecalls.com. And if you're somebody that needs that pick me up, that lift, and then also my website, joanrobison.com, where you can get the book and the cards. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's just been a pleasure. And I love that this kind of subject about raising your vibration and understanding where your true power really comes from was special to you as well, Brigham. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. And guys, with that, we're going to end our call. But once again, thank you, Joan, for all you do. This last little idea of just I Ching EE, one focus and one result, one meaning behind it. When you are focused in doing the things that matter the most to you, man, your life, your reality is going to start changing. I'm so grateful to have Joan on today. And guys, with that, I hope you keep leveling up your life every single day. Find those little things, those little dominoes that will make the biggest impact for you. Go out, and if you want more value, hit that like and subscribe button.